So why don't we get started? We stay on track because there are a few parts to these events, and we want to enjoy each and every part as best we can. Welcome. This is our first spring event in our business leadership series at the Eastern Business School at the Catalyst. And we've had a few of these so far, a crowd like this, and we're very pleased you could make it. We're going to hold two more talks, and I'll get into who they are. We have one of the scheduled speakers in the audience right now as we wrap up. And all this is coming from, again, the business school at Eastern Washington University, but with a little bit of help from some friends. And I don't know if we have any of those friends in the audience. It's Washington Trust Bank. Anybody from Washington Trust? Well, let's give them a round of applause in absentia. So there's basically three goals, especially for the students in the audience in these events. And we want you to hear from some of the business people who were once in your seats, and basically tell their story, how they got there, what they do now, and by the way, what they're looking for in new hires, as some of you students will be in just a few short months. We hope you'll be inspired by the stories, because there's a lot of drama in how people get to where they are, and typically we're having CEOs give these talks, so it doesn't just happen overnight. And then finally, we want you to have fun and mingle. And to that end, for anybody who's been here before, student-wise, you know that there's going to be some really good food. No alcoholic drinks this time, but some really good food when we conclude. So we're going to have three parts to the event. We're going to have a talk. Then we're going to have a lot of Q&A. In fact, more Q&A, we hope, than the talk. And so, if you have hard questions, don't hesitate to ask them, because that's what we've told the speaker that he could expect. And then again, that will be followed by mingle time and some food and drink. The Q&A is going to be moderated by Professor Dustin Sim. Do you want to raise your hand, Dustin? So he's going to be in the stage far longer than I am, and along with our speaker. I just want to acknowledge that we have a couple leaders from the university here tonight, and it wouldn't be right not to recognize them. First and foremost, our very hardworking provost, Dr. John Anderson. Some of you students may have met him. Dr. Anderson has had, in my opinion, one of the most challenging jobs at our university, any university. And then we have the relatively new dean of the School of Professional Programs. There he is, Dr. Osman Ostergud. So I'd like to have Provost Anderson come on up and tell you a little bit about some of the changes that are going on at Eastern, and that he's been had a big hand in. So, John?
Shook my own hand. Nice to see all your smiling faces. John Anderson, I'm the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs at Eastern. Thank you all for being here. Might be helpful if I put the right side of my paper up. So welcome to the EW School of Business Lecture Series. This is a platform where industry leaders and innovators and scholars share insights that bridge the gap between academic learning and the real world and their applications. You might have heard about Eastern. We are the region's polytechnic. And as the region's polytechnic, this series reflects our commitment to hands-on learning, industry collaboration, and career-ready education. I like to talk about moving out of the books and into the businesses, and from the classrooms and into the community. And here we've actually flipped that. We've brought the businesses to the books and the community to the classroom. So thank you all for being here. Each lecture through this series brings valuable perspectives on the evolving business landscape, inspiring students and professionals alike to drive innovation and leadership in their fields. You'll meet our speaker tonight, Gordon Hester. He never keeps it under 60 miles an hour on the freeway in his Hellcat or in business in his role. A quote from a few years ago, and in a spotlight with Greater Spokane Inc., Gordon emphasized a customer-centric business philosophy, stating, "Our business philosophy has always been to do everything we can to create customer success. And if you are customer-centric in all your decision-making, the success in your business will follow." And I love that. Everything about that. Because here at Eastern, we mirror the same thing. Here at Eastern, we do everything we can to create student success. And if we are student-centric in our decision-making, the success of the university will follow. Thank you for being here, and enjoy the evening.
All right, let's bring our featured speaker to the stage, Mr. Gordon Hester. There he is. Gordon is the president of Kiemle Hagood, a longstanding and quite large property management and brokerage company headquartered in downtown Spokane. Gordon began his career, I've learned, at a different firm in downtown Spokane, but then shortly decided to join Kiemle and Hagood, and that was a mere 35 years ago. At Kiemle and Hagood, he served as the vice president for commercial real estate for many, many years before becoming president and CEO 6 years ago. For those of you who don't know, Gordon is an Eagle, graduating from this very school with a degree in business and finance. So welcome, Gordon Hester.
Go Eagles. Well, before I get started on my speech, I'd be remiss in not thanking Larry Soren, who's a fellow Eag and the gentleman that hired me 34 years ago. And also, for anything that I made up about Kiemle Hagood or my career, he's going to immediately heckle me because he knows when I'm full of it, because he was there for almost the entire journey for me. So great to see my friend Larry here. So I want to talk a little bit about our company and about my journey and how I came to Eastern Washington University. I started my college career south of here at WSU and thought I was going to be an electrical engineer, and that lasted about one semester, and realized that I really wasn't cut out to be an engineer, but spent my first 2.5 years of college at WSU, managed to run out of money, managed to lose my enthusiasm for an education, and went on what I told my dad was a sabbatical. He didn't call it that, but I was a truck driver for a while. I worked on a landing for a logging company, cutting timber to length and limbing trees, and I also worked in the sawmill. And what that did was reinvigorate my desire to finish my education. And my dad was always really good about finding those jobs that encouraged me to want to do something else. So after taking a year off, I went to Eastern Washington University and really found a home and a school that was much more personal to me. It was a place where you could connect with your professors directly, and that was an experience that I didn't have at the other school I attended, and just really enjoyed that opportunity to finish my degree there, and then interview and start working in Spokane. Oh, wrong direction. So Kiemle Hagood was founded in 1973 by Ed Kiemle and Jerry Hagood, and Ed was the property management expert and Jerry was the broker. And what those two gentlemen brought together was an understanding that both of them were talented in their individual parts of the business, but by doing something together, they could bring a higher level of service to their clients. And that's really something, the day I was hired, that my boss always imparted to me, that, we're here to serve the client and we're here to work as a motivated and impassioned team to achieve success for our customers. So it was really a great philosophy to grow up in for 34 years, and it's been very consistent my entire career there. We have 2 offices in Spokane, one in Kennewick, one in Coeur d'Alene, one in Missoula, and our current portfolio is about 15 million square feet. And anywhere from Missoula, Montana to the Yakima, from the Canadian border to Walla Walla. We manage a lot of different product types. So it's maybe shopping centers, maybe high-rise office buildings, maybe little small single-tenant retail, but it's really kind of a unique and fun portfolio to be involved with. We do property management, leasing and sales. We do facility management and maintenance. We also do residential property management, and we do some development of low-income housing. So we have some very good clients in the Spokane area that sponsor some of the low-income housing that we get a chance to develop and then manage for them. So it's been a really fun portfolio and fun group to work with. You know, one of the things that Larry was very adamant when I first started at Kiemle and Hagood is you have to understand the value of community involvement. And he stuck me on the board of the Northeast Community Center Association very early on in my career at Kiemle Hagood. And as you start having the opportunity to meet people out in the community and understand the value that participation brings to you and your business, it was just an incredible lesson that I think the company today still values very highly. And we were talking the other day that we have almost 50 different organizations that our employees either participate on boards or volunteer in, and it's really gratifying to see them understand the value of understanding your community and how you fit into that community as a business, how important that is. So that's been very fun. They asked me to paint the picture of real estate, and I get asked this question a lot. Well, how's the market? And actually, somebody asked me that tonight. How's the real estate market? And my stock answer is, it depends. You know, and it really, when you look at the real estate market, there are certain aspects of the market that can be like the Mona Lisa, and then there are certain aspects of the market that look like me finger painting on the floor. So it's really understanding what makes up the real estate market, and we take a look at the market a couple different ways. You know, we look at the type of building. So the office market is certainly different than the industrial market. And we look at the retail market. We also look at the quality of the product. So we refer to that as Class A, Class B, and Class C, with A being the newest product with the most amenities, B being kind of an average product, and C being the older, you know, less desirable properties. And then we also look at geographic location, because you'll find that the market for something may be dramatically different in West Spokane than it is in Spokane Valley. So we just, the timing for this was interesting because we just finished our market report for the real estate market forum tomorrow over in Coeur d'Alene. So I've got some good statistics that are updated and kind of talk to you about what's going on in some of those different market segments. If you look at, you know, what are the strong areas in the market right now, certainly industrial remains very strong. You know, the vacancy is 5% or less, and we've got really strong rent growth in the industrial market. The apartment market has probably slowed a little bit in 2024, but still remains a very strong segment and a strong market in the Spokane area. Vacancy is about 8.6%. Well-located retail remains very strong, and you probably see in the newspaper lately there's a ton of announcement about chicken restaurants in Spokane, and we seem to have, the chicken restaurants have found Spokane now. So every chicken franchise there is now moving to Spokane, but it's interesting to me to see that, you know, activity and that interest in our region from certain types of retailers, quick service retail, fast food. And then we saw the announcement of Ashley Furniture going into the Northtown Mall space that was vacant. And I think that's another good indication that retail as a segment and as a market is certainly not dead. It's certainly, you know, there's going to be some adapting and changing, but it's great to see activity in that market in Spokane. Geographically, if you haven't driven out to Airway Heights and the Four Lakes area on your way to Cheney, go Eagles, you will see an amazing amount of industrial development and retail development out in that area. And that's been an area that has languished for many years. So that is a great example of a regional area that's really experiencing strong market demand. If you look at the Coeur d'Alene and Rathbun Prairie, our company had several hundred acres of land listed between Liberty Lake and Coeur d'Alene and sold every bit of it last year. So it's really a testament to that North Idaho, Rathbun Prairie market when it comes to housing and how desirable that is. So it's a pretty interesting thing to look at what the market leaders were. And if you look at, you know, challenges to the market, one of the things we're running into now is infrastructure. So if you look at the West Plains in particular, if you can't get water, sewer, and power to the property, it makes it really hard to continue to develop. So we're seeing a lot of that focus now, where we're going to need to work with our municipalities and figure out how to resolve the infrastructure challenges that we're facing. You know, certainly within the downtown core, crime and homelessness becomes an issue that affects our market and people's perception. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but it really does impact, the desirable ability and marketability of office space. And then the increased interest rate environment has a pretty good impact on investment real estate. And in 2023, when we could buy properties and finance it at 3.5 or 4%, we were selling buildings like crazy. And then the interest rate kicks up to 5, 6, 7%, and we really saw the investment market drop off. And part of that, and I'm a little more of a conservative investor, but I always feel that you've got to have a gap between your cost of capital and your return on investment. For me, that's always about 2%. So if it costs me 6%, I've got to be able to get this 8% return and kind of manage that margin. And the market hasn't caught up with that realization yet. So we've saw investment sales drop off quite a bit in 2024. Patrick asked me to talk about the office market a little bit, and it's fascinating to me what's going on and how this has evolved into some of the challenges that we're facing today. And with the COVID policies, we had the state of Washington say, you've got to take all your employees and move them out of your office space. You can't work in this building anymore. And our company adapted, and we got a lot smarter about technology, and we realized a lot of what we do, we called, critical. It might have been a stretch in my mind, but we did it so we could bring employees back faster and regain use of our office space. But what a lot of companies found out is they may not have needed all that office space. So we saw an artificial shift in the demand curve for office that doesn't necessarily rely on traditional supply and demand. And I never thought I'd use a shift in demand curve ever when I graduated my economics class at Eastern, but I watched it in real life, and I watched how it happened, and it immediately shifted the demand for office space. And then when you look at some of the legislation that creates some of the homelessness and drug issues that we have, that aggravates that demand for office space, particularly in the areas where those populations congregate. So the downtown area becomes even more problematic with demand. So the central business district, as of our report a couple of days ago, is 28% vacant. So that is almost a third of the office space is empty. And as my friend Larry probably will say, I don't know that I've ever seen downtown Spokane that vacant. And that's a little scary. The office market in general across Spokane is 15% vacant. That's also probably as high as I've ever seen it for the Spokane County market. And to give you a comparison, the Kootenai County vacancy for office space is about 4.5%. So much smaller market, granted, but much smaller vacancy percentage. And if you look at some of particularly in the CBD, some of the individual buildings, the Crescent Court building has 160,000 square feet vacant. Chase Bank, Umpqua Bank, 55,000 square feet vacant. Bank of America, 90,000 square feet vacant. And you can look at those numbers and they don't mean anything until you start understanding what that means. And at 425,000 square feet, at $20 a foot rent, that's $8.5 million in rent that's not entering the economy in downtown Spokane. So very serious impacts on what that vacancy means. If you look at one person for every 200 feet, that's about 2,000 employees in our downtown. They're not shopping, they're not dining, they're not using services there. So from a economic standpoint, the statistics in the office market are a little frightening, and we're going to have to get creative, and it may be a little painful into how we fix it. So I want to talk about perception a little bit. So if the public looks at downtown and they're seeing the guy on the left, or they think downtown looks like Zach Galifianakis, I'm a sales guy. I think downtown looks like Dwayne Johnson. And I'm trying to explain to everybody there is opportunity, there is marketability, but you still have to deal with the customer's perception. So for those of us in the real estate business, it's understanding there are true things that we're going to have to fix downtown, but we also have to talk differently about how we talk about real estate and how we talk about our economy and how we talk about the market. And what I don't want to be doing is crying wolf and screaming that woe is me and there's all these problems when there really are some unique opportunities and reasons. Education, a lot of the things going on near and in the downtown area that really make downtown a very viable, great place to do business. So I say the truth will set you free, because that's really what I have to do as a salesperson. I've got to go out and find the truth and help change the perception from the people that say, oh, it's not safe downtown, or it's scary downtown. And we say, well, there are some things going on, but we're actually working collaboratively with a lot of our different partners to really change that. So that's my job, is to try to move myself more towards Dwayne Johnson and look less like the guy on the left. From a solution standpoint, frankly, it could take several years and it could take millions of dollars. And there's a lot of different things that we're going to have to think about to solve it. There's conversion of office space into other uses. So it's a lot of people will say, why don't you just turn the office building into an apartment building? Well, first, it takes several $1,000,000 to do that, and you have to be able to get the capital, and then you have to think that there's enough demand that I can backfill that space with residents and make a financial sense out of it. So some of that is happening. Some of it is repositioning of space. So you're seeing what I see right now in the market is a flight to quality. So a lot of people are now able to move from lower quality buildings to higher quality buildings because our rents are dropping a little bit. So we're seeing some of that to try to take advantage of vacancy. And I do think we're going to see some fairly significant foreclosure and repositioning of real estate. We've avoided that in Spokane quite a bit, but you're hearing it hit the Portland market and the Seattle market pretty aggressively now. And I think it is something that we're going to end up facing in Spokane at some point. So skill sets for careers in real estate. And I should probably ask Larry this because I must have been a better salesman than I thought when I walked into his office 34 years ago and said, you really need to hire me. And he saw a kid from Kettle Falls, Washington, and thought, oh my God, what is this guy doing? But when I think about, all the different things that I've learned in my career and the things that have been valuable. When I started my career in real estate, I actually worked for a mortgage company, and I repossessed houses. So part of my first job was I repossessed mobile homes in North Idaho, and I would drag them down to Moses Lake and put them on small, like 1-acre lots and sell them as mobile homes and land as a package. We repossessed land in Goldendale, Washington. If you're familiar with your geography of Washington, there's not a lot of water in Goldendale. So you could sell it as ranch land, or you could drill 700-foot deep wells and try to get 1 gallon a minute and sell it as residential land. So I drilled a lot of deep wells in Goldendale. And then the other thing that I did is I repossessed 2 square blocks of oil worker housing in Casper, Wyoming. And when they send a 23-year-old kid in an airplane to Casper, Wyoming, and they say, yep, there's all these tenants there. They're all paying rent. I get my rental car and I drive to downtown Casper, Wyoming, and it's 2 blocks of boarded up vacant buildings. So it was an interesting education. I learned nothing surprises me in real estate very often, and that's translated well into property management because you run into a lot of odd things. But it was a really interesting experience. And I knew that I liked real estate, but I really wanted to work somewhere where I felt like we were doing more and gaining more and being more professional. And that's what led me to Kiemle and Hagood. Some of the things I look for that are so important, communication skills are incredibly important. Can you write a business letter? Can you write an email that makes sense? Can you speak well? Can you communicate to a customer? And those are things I really look for when people, I'm looking at your resume. Do you have grammatical errors in your resume? Do you have spelling errors? Pay attention to that stuff because it does matter. Math and accounting, I don't think I ever understood how much I would use math and accounting in real estate, but you use it every day. Whether it's calculating return on investment, internal rate of return, cash flow after taxes, so many of the things we do are deal with the investment part of real estate. So you're going to use the math and accounting skills a lot. And frankly, a couple of times you either get into geometry and a couple of the weird things as you're working construction management and trying to figure out building issues. But so the math and accounting part is very important. The problem solving is very important. Being inquisitive and having a good customer service personality about you. The other thing that I think is a skill that I probably didn't recognize as much as business law. So we negotiate lease agreements every day. We're negotiating purchase and sale agreements. We're entering into vendor contracts, and that ability to read a legal contract and understand contract law and how that relates to what you're doing in real estate was very important. So when I'm interviewing people, I'm looking for, have you taken a business law course? Have you taken a real estate law course? Do you understand kind of that obligation and the seriousness of your role in helping execute some of that at the company? So those are good skills and things I look for. And probably the surprising thing for me is the other courses you take at Eastern that apply that I never had any idea that would apply. So, and I can talk about this gentleman because Larry knows who he is, but we had an owner that was a client that a very, very wealthy, serious business person, multimillionaire, was, large CEO of a regional bank. I mean, just a very sophisticated gentleman. And he would come into our office every quarter and he would want to talk about his real estate investment. And he would bring Larry and I into the conference room and we would talk about what we were doing and we would talk about the economy and politics and the building. And I've never met anybody who's more serious about business and his time than that gentleman. And it taught me to be efficient. And Larry and I were laughing that you would be talking and explaining something to him, he'd look at his watch. And he'd give you these verbal cues of speed it up, kid, speed it up. And so I learned from that, and Larry and I were when he looks at his watch, go to the next topic. When he looks at his watch, go to the next topic. And I was really intimidated by him the first couple meetings we had. And I have no idea how it came up, but at one point we were the concept of geology came up, and we were talking about the basalt flows across central Washington and the Great Missoula Flood and how it helped form the geology that's in Washington. And this gentleman had a real interest in geology. And I was thinking, thank God my professor at Eastern helped get me interested in geology, because I could carry on a conversation with this business person outside of the business. And it helped me connect with him a little better by having that rounded experience and taking some of those courses that I probably never gave a second thought to. And the other thing I laughed about is this gentleman also owned a very expensive fly fishing rod company, and he was very passionate about fishing. So all I had to do was bring up, hey, where'd you go fly fishing last month? And you could break the ice and learn to communicate with this person on a level other than just on a business basis. So from a student standpoint and a career skill standpoint, that ability to make a connection with your customer is so important, and it really allows you to be more human. It allowed me to get over that feeling of anxiety every time I had a meeting with him, because he was going to terrify me for how serious he was, but it was pretty fun. You know, when I look at our company, one of the things that I think that makes us different, and I learned this from Ed and Jerry, and I learned it from Larry, and I've learned it from all my predecessors, you really have to be an evangelist about what you do. And you have to care about your customer, and you have to care about your employees. And so nothing gets me more excited when I can get up there and make a pitch for why you should hire Kiemle Hagood. And I remember being over in Seattle talking to a very big customer that had about 3 million square feet. And I was pumped. I knew we had it the minute we walked in, and I was so excited. And I could talk to them about, this is why Kiemle Hagood's different. This is why we're going to manage your real estate for you better than anybody else. And that ability to connect and be passionate about what you do is so important if you're looking for that career success. One of the things I learned early on in my career is, when you start, I'm always going to my boss and saying, well, when am I going to get that cost of living increase? When am I going to get another title? And when am I going to get moved from a cubicle to an office? And you start thinking about your value as it relates to a very specific individual value of yourself. And what you realize at some point in your career, the value you bring to the company and the value you bring to the customer is so much more important. And the minute I quit thinking about, well, I'm going to get a 2.5% cost of living increase, and started thinking about, I'm going to increase the return on investment in my client's building by 10%, it flipped a switch for me. And I realized it's not about the value I bring for my little individual self. It's the value you bring to your customer and to your company. And I remember that point vividly in my career, sitting in my boss's office, doing my annual review, and having him look at me and he goes, you're a different guy. You're different than you were a year ago. And it was because I was able to see that. So, having that understanding and the bigger vision of the value you bring as an employee to your customer and to your company, I think really will help you progress in your career at a much significantly faster level. The last thing I talk about is understand your why. Why do you do it? And Dr. Osmond was laughing at me. I had a video on LinkedIn with me and my grandson being silly the other day. And, having that opportunity to think about your family and what's really important. I mean, these jobs are important and the customers you meet are important, but you're really doing it to take care of your family and the personal things that are important to you, whether it's chasing Nerf darts around my living room, whether it's admitting to the fact that I have a problem with dog hair on my couch, or whether it's volunteering at the fire department and helping little kids understand that firefighters aren't scary. I mean, all of these things round you out as a person and really help you understand your why and why we do this stuff that we do. And certainly participating with Eastern Washington University has been such a blessing for me. And I'm so excited about what I hear about the university and the staff and just the enthusiasm you feel for the Eagles. It's really exciting. So I'm super excited to have a chance to visit with you today. Look forward to answering any questions. And that's my story. How can I help you guys?
How about a round of applause? Thank you so much. Professor Sem, do you want to come up? And the way this will work now is Professor Sem's going to ask about 3 questions or so of Gordon. And then we want you to be thinking about the questions you'd like to ask. And don't be bashful. I'm talking especially to students. this is your opportunity to pick the brains of one of our leading business people in Spokane. So, and by the way, I was remiss in letting you know who I am. I'm not just some gray-haired baby boomer just moonlighting here for the university, but I do run something at the university called the Institute for Public Policy and Economics, and my name is Patrick Jones, as you may have heard. So with that, Dustin and Gordon, go at it.
Hi, Gordon. Can you all hear me? All right. So I looked through not just this, but what you sent us before. And one of the things that jumped out to me that you also mentioned here is, I mean, I never knew you would repossess mobile homes and drive them somewhere else. I thought that was pretty funny, but it made me wonder, was real estate really your first choice? Or in college, what was the shift that brought you into real estate?
So I don't, from a property management perspective, I don't know anybody that ever got into property management with the intention of going into property management. It's kind of it's a profession that everybody falls into. So when I had my finance degree, I would think I was going to be a stockbroker. I was going to be a banker. And so I interviewed with the FBI and their accounting division. I interviewed with Radio Shack to be a store manager. When you graduate college, you're just trying to find that job. So I needed to pay the rent and find a way to take care of my family. And I interviewed for a job with the mortgage company as a contract buyer. And my background throughout college, I worked a lot of blue collar jobs, worked a lot of construction. And he goes, I don't think you don't have the experience to be a contract buyer, but I think you'd be a great property manager. And so they threw me into property management, and you kind of fall into that and realize, within that particular job, I got to use my accounting, I got to use my finance, I got to use my construction. You're not in the office every day. Certainly, you're out of the office looking at buildings and meeting with tenants. So it was something that I discovered by accident and really developed a love for. I mean, it's really a fun career and just a great job. So,
another thing that you mentioned here about growth of downtown. How does the North Bank, Kendall Yards, all that stuff on the other side of the river? I've lived here most of my life. Left for a little bit, came back. I like to see that development, but I also, when I go there, don't cross the river anymore. Am I alone, or is that something that you find is an odd growth situation?
No, that's part of what I talk about, perception. I mean, there is so many good things going on in Spokane and around downtown and on the North Bank. I mean, the new development, the podium, the field, what happens in the university district, this building, there's a lot of great things going on. But if there's a perception that downtown isn't safe, people won't cross the river. So our job really is to figure out, how do I help you understand that it's the perception of downtown may not be as accurate as you think. Here's the good things going on downtown. And really the more positive energy and positive foot traffic you can bring also helps fix some of that concern about downtown. So my wife and I had dinner down there last week, and we were out on the street at 8:00, and it was terrific. The restaurants weren't as full as we'd like, but so part of that is the whole marketing of downtown in Spokane, particularly around the CBD, has to be done a little better and certainly more aggressively.
Are there questions out here? I have a few more, but I'd much rather listen to our students.
Do I just shout? Hi there. So I wrote this down so I wouldn't forget. So on the topic of public presentation, I guess my question is, could real estate as an industry be an ally in investment in homeless housing programs in order to alter that perception of downtown as a dangerous space?
I don't think I heard all of what you said, but you're talking about the homeless population and helping that population?
Right. So could the real estate industry local to our area be an ally in establishing housing programs or recovery programs for the unhoused population in our area?
So I am very, very probably a little prejudiced about how we manage that concern, because I really think that the homeless population is not a homogeneous bunch. You have people who are truly homeless and ready to enter housing, and we can assist them fairly easily. And there's housing available for that population. There's a mentally ill population that is unhoused because they're not getting the mental health treatment. So we have to treat them different and try to get them the mental health counseling. And then there's the drug population that we have that no matter what you do, they won't stay in housing. And I can say that because we manage low-income housing that has all three types of homeless people in it. But you're correct. I mean, we really have to find a way to aggressively work, not only to put the people that need housing in housing, but then get the other people the services they need. And it's been something that we've talked about and we have not done very well as a city to combine all that effort to take care of the drug addiction, take care of the mental health counseling, and get everybody into housing that way. So that is the key to fixing what's going on downtown. We just got to manage those three different populations.
I work in residential real estate, and I know that there's like a big talk about trying to eliminate the agent with like companies coming in to kind of replace the agent. Do you think that will come to fruition, or do you think there'll always be a salesperson in the middle of transactions?
It's different in commercial. So I mean, there's a lot of national, large lawsuits trying to do that. I think for us, it's really talking about the value of what we bring into a transaction, and I think it's no different than residential. And I have a real estate license. I've had one for 35 years, and I work with a residential realtor every time I buy a house because I want your expertise and I want that value you bring to the transaction. I think, as residential brokers, that's probably something we've got to focus on marketing because people have to understand the value you bring. It's not just, well, I'm going to charge you a fee and I'm going to put your house on the multiple. It's helping people understand what you do that provides that value and justifies that commission. So I think there will always be demand for brokers in residential, but we've just got to make sure we're marketing that. And it may be that some of the brokers that like to put up a sign and wait for something to sell maybe aren't in the business. So we're going to have to provide that value, but I think it'll be there.
There's another one up front.
So I was wondering. Yeah. So you were just mentioning about perception. And I was wondering, because you're talking about downtown Spokane, for example, how there's certain people who view it as like that bum looking character. And some other people look at like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. And I was thinking, how do you change people's perspective on like your property, your neighborhood, or even yourself as you're walking in? Like they see me as a young Gen Z dude and they're like, oh, they're lazy, always on their phone on TikTok. How do you change that perspective where it's like, no, they're not like that little bum right there, always on their phone complaining. They're more like a Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson person.
Well, I'll give you one example where, I was working with that same individual that was a multimillionaire and a very sophisticated business person, and I renewed a lease on a coffee shop in downtown Spokane, and a good rate, no tenant improvements. It was a really good transaction, and I sent him the lease to sign it, and I get a phone call, and it's like, what the heck are you doing? You've done a crappy job, and this is below market rent. I don't know what you were doing, and I was completely just blown away. I'm like, well, what do you mean? I mean, and what you realize is it was his perception that he didn't know all the work that went into it to get that transaction done. So for me, it was a failure of me to market and communicate and explain. So I learned working, hey, I need to do a better job of communicating. It's no different than what I'm doing if I'm trying to change the perception of downtown. I have to be able to communicate the vision of what we're doing. I have to be able to show the examples. And we've got new businesses downtown that have moved in that are very excited about being there. So it's using those people as examples of, this law firm just moved into 3,000 feet in the Chase building. They love it here. They understand the value that downtown brings. You can walk to any number of restaurants. And so, but it's one person at a time, and it's finding that communication. And if I'm a young, inexperienced kid, it was sitting in Larry's office explaining to him, I know I come from Kettle Falls, but I've actually worked real hard, and you'll be glad you hired me. And he stuck it out for 34 years. But it's one person at a time, and it's communication.
Other questions? Middle? Lexi?
So I'm a student in a class right now where I'm working with a small business downtown who is struggling with getting recognition just based on walking traffic and social media and stuff like that. Do you think that there are areas of Spokane that are better for restaurants in order to get recognition, or do you think that it's just in general, like you have to be a known entity in order to get that recognition?
From a restaurant standpoint, this sounds like a bit of a, cop out, but location is important, and it's being able to. Can your customers find you? Can your customers park there? Is it convenient? And I'll use an example. I was up at Northtown Mall going to Bonefish. great food, great atmosphere. My wife and I went for dinner there, had a wonderful meal. For an hour and a half, we were the only people in the restaurant. And there's, I don't know how many people sit in that restaurant, probably 200. I mean, that's terrifying as a business owner if you're sitting back there seeing me and my wife as the only people in your restaurant for an hour and a half. So, and that you would assume great location, plenty of parking, but something within that marketing mix isn't connecting with the customer. So whether it's social media, whether it's advertising, where is your customer? Where are you trying to draw them from? And is that location good for them? And I think, I would have guessed that was a great location for a restaurant. I would have been wrong, but and you see it downtown, somebody moves 2 blocks and their business explodes. And whether it's people discover them, whatever it is, that little thing that helps people recognize the value there. And you've always got to have good product, good quality, good service, because it only takes one bad experience and everybody doesn't come back.
Hi.
Hi.
Can everyone hear me?
Go Eags.
I'm also in commercial real estate. I work at NAI Black. So I'm wondering, as I'm trying to market downtown properties, having that conversation with the landlord about lowering rent to try to get more activity has been tough. Do you have any advice on how to have that conversation?
When you've got 30% vacancy, no amount of rent lowering is going to fix it. I could give space away for free and it's not going to fill up 500,000 square feet. So I've got to rethink my strategy. Well, how am I going to get people in here? The other problem you've got in a building, Crescent Court, with that much vacancy, if I don't fill it up, we're not paying the power bill, we're not paying the mortgage, we're not paying the janitors. So it becomes a sense of urgency on how to fix it. So you've got it. What I do is I look for comps. So depending on what type of property you manage, I want to make sure that I'm within the market. So if I know that Class A real estate's probably in that $20 to $24 a foot range, I want to make sure that I'm competitive. I also want to be talking about the value of my building. If you come into the Chase building, I don't want to have the floors dirty. I don't want to have drug paraphernalia from homeless people there. So you've got to have a good product at all time, and then you've got to manage that rent conversation constructively. Because the other thing is, if I'm cutting the rent down and then telling the owner you need to spend $200 a foot on tenant improvements, that also doesn't work. So it's a balance, and it takes conviction, and it takes being able to talk about your return on investment, and here's what happened if we invest this money, or if we drop rent and we pick up 2 tenants, this is what that means to you financially. So you're going to do a lot of that math for the owner so that you can lay it out in a way that they're going to understand it. Mm-hmm.
Was there a question over here?
We've got one in the back, it looks like.
Yep.
Just for YouTube's sake. Yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you. Hi, I'm probably the only guy who's not from business. I'm from computer science. So very nice to have you here. Thank you, whosoever hosted them. So my question is not related to business, I would say, but I have seen like there are so many technologies coming up, so many tools coming up. Like we can talk about AI, machine learning, and so many other things other than that. But I've seen, like you were talking about, the restaurants that are not being, and I have also seen other businesses that are going out of business. And I've also seen that people or the business owners, maybe like real estate owners or somebody who's owning a restaurant or any other local businessman, they are not using those technologies as of now. Like I have tried to reach out to them. I was like, I can make things for you. You just give me what to make. But like, it's not as easy for them to think that way, that okay, how we can use the technology to outgrow our business and reach out to more people. So I just wanted to ask you, if you like, how do you think can this technology like AI or whatever technology can help, one, real estate, and two, any other local business that is going on and could go out of business, but we can help them in some way or the other?
So part of that is having a credible message. And I would say that because I get 100 emails a day from people telling me that AI is going to fix commercial real estate. So technology's always been around, and technology has evolved, since I started 34 years ago. So the connection you've got to make if you're in the technology business is what specifically is that going to do for my job to either make it easier or make it more profitable. Because that's really the way I'm going to look at it. You know, could it make me better at what I do so I can provide better service, or is it going to make my company more profitable? And a lot of times, what I get, the emails that I get is they want to sell technology for the sake of technology, and that's been going on for 34 years. So it's not just AI or this current, you know, I mean, I would hate to admit it, but I tell Larry this. I found a management agreement yesterday that actually was from 1971, been done on a typewriter, and I was horrified for the fact that that's still a management agreement that had been in place for that building. And you know, technology is much more different now, and we can manage that process to get a new contract signed and handle all that stuff. But you've got to find a way to connect the technology to how it's going to benefit the client.
Do you have other questions in the audience? Got a couple.
Hi, I want to go into real estate, and so I guess my question is, do you have any advice on someone who wants to go into this and is still in the early stages? I know you said you like to see people that take business law and real estate law. Anything else?
You know, like I kind of mentioned, I fell into real estate by accident, and there's a lot of different careers that are around real estate. So there's banking, you know, there's real estate departments within banks. There's corporate facility real estate, so people that manage the real estate that the business is in. There's third party real estate companies like my company. There's residential real estate. So if you like the topic and the general idea, don't be afraid to put your foot in and start somewhere. And I think, you know, for me, it's evolved working from repossessing mobile homes. We were laughing about that, and doing some of the things I did with the mortgage company to doing property management, and then now really managing people. I only manage one building anymore, but really, you know, just don't be afraid to get into the business. And there's a lot of different avenues to enter it, and see where it takes you, see where you find your passion there.
I think there was a couple more back there still. Yeah.
Thank you for speaking first. Second, do you have any professional designations? If so, can you speak to those, or do you recommend a certain route for designations to consider as a new broker or even as an experienced one?
I have no professional designations that deal with real estate. All mine deal with the fire department. So it's weird because that's where I gravitated to get my, you know, fire instructor 1 certification, my hazmat certification, and all that other stuff. But you know, CPM IRM is a great, you know, the CPM is a great designation for the property management business. The SIOR for Society of Industrial and Office, you know, that's a good one for brokers. CCIM is a great broker designation. So what I would do, look at where your interest lies. Is it more in a transactional basis or a management basis? And all of those designations are great. I mean, I think it helps give you validity to what you're doing. And you know, for whatever reason, I was always off doing something else and never got around to it. But we have several people in our company have designations both through IRM and BOMA, and very valuable.
I thought I saw one other hand up back there. No? Oh, yep, there we go, right in the middle.
Pardon me. Thank you.
Yeah, just curious about what you might see coming on North Division with all the changes that are coming there as it's displaced by the North Spokane Freeway. We have a transit-oriented development bill going through the legislature right now. Just curious about what you might see coming.
I'm not sure. I mean, with change always comes opportunity. So if you take freight and that type of traffic off of a street that's better for retail, and it doesn't impact the retail and the interbusiness traffic and that kind of stuff, I think that's good. But it depends on, you know, how is your access in and out. And you can look at it. My friend Carl here from STA, you know, the line we did downtown and all that type of stuff that STA, it could have been horrible or it could have been great. And they really did a good job engaging the public and saying, all right, so how do we make this something that integrates traffic with the business, and people that don't want to, or that are passing through, aren't inconvenienced, but the people that want to stop and shop and participate in the real estate can. And I think you see that as a great example. And I mean, I don't know how many years you guys worked on that plan, Carl. It seemed like we had 2 years of meetings before we built bus stops. But really, it was a very engaged process where they say, how do we make this an amenity? And North Division is going to be the same way. How do we make sure that what we're doing isn't just taking people and moving them? It's creating an amenity where people that want to be there and shop and visit the businesses can, and the people that want to get through town from a freight or whatever standpoint can as well. And I mean, we manage a lot of real estate on North Division, so I've got a lot of concerns about it too. How's my traffic? How are my people going to get in and out of their building?
Brunigan.
So I've been hearing a lot of real estate experts here in this room, and I've been seeing a lot of new real estate companies popping up in Spokane. I've lived in Spokane all my life. I've seen them come, I've seen them go, and I've been seeing a lot of realtors on TikTok posting videos and stuff. And what makes, do you have any advice for these people because there's so many of them out there, only so many can last as long as your company can. What's your tip to like some of these new realtors, real estate agents for sticking around for decades and not just being around for a few years and then once the market tanks, their career is over?
And you probably see a little more of that in the residential market. There's a little, the barrier to entry is a little lower in the residential market. And again, it's really finding your passion and being good at what you do, finding your niche, and then working it. I mean, there's this philosophy. Well, I'm just going to go get a real estate license. I'm going to make $1 million. It doesn't work that way. It's a hard job, and there's a lot you have to know, and the law and just understanding everything that goes into whether you're selling a house and understanding the legalities and the transactions that you have to do that, or whether you're selling a $500,000 building, or we just sold a $14 million building a couple months ago. So there's those types of things require you to be good at your craft, stick to your business plan, and continue to learn. I'm getting my master's degree right now. I have no idea why, but it just feels like I need to continue to learn and be better at what I do. And within the fire department, I did it as a kind of a fluke because my house about burned down, and we had a big forest fire go through between my buddies and my house. We said, well, let's go volunteer at the fire department. Well, then I get my EMT license, then I get my hazmat certification, then I become a fire instructor, then I'm a lieutenant, and then I'm captain at a station. And before long, I'm like, what the heck? I mean, it's just, if you focus on what you want to do and you're passionate about it, you will succeed. And so it's finding that passion. And I mean, crap, they were trying to get me to become a fireman. I'm like, I own a company. I can't do that. But be good at it and be disciplined about it and focus on it. Learn. I mean, you never stop learning. I learn something new about real estate every day.
Thank you for some great questions. Oh, Habib? We have more. And then Habib will give us a good question to end on.
Hi, my name is Habib. I teach entrepreneurship here at Eastern. So I have like 2 questions. The first one is, we've seen almost the house prices have gone up by almost like 300% in certain areas in Spokane since COVID, since 2020. So what's your advice to, like, first-time house buyers are being priced out of the market, right? So I kind of worry about my students who are going to graduate, get a job, make 50 grand, and not be able to afford a house. Mm-hmm. So what would be your sort of advice to prospective first-time house owners? And then the second question is, what are, in terms of support industries to commercial real estate, what are some of the industry support tasks or industries that are lacking that you want to see in the Spokane area that could support commercial real estate?
So from a home buyer perspective, and I've got 2 sons that just had kids, and they're beginning their journey as home buyers and family, building their families. And my first son is incredibly disciplined, and he watches every penny he spends. So he looks at, do I need cable TV or not? No, I want to buy a house. So you're going to have to be very disciplined in your approach to managing your personal finances, I think, if you want to be a home buyer at a young age. It's a big stretch. And the affordability for housing in Spokane has dropped dramatically the last 3 years because it does require a higher percentage of your income. So we may also have to get creative as a real estate market, and we're building duplexes, triplexes, we're building townhouses. And so we're trying to get a little more creative on the types of real estate we're building so that first-time home buyers will have different opportunities to get into housing as an owner and not as a tenant. So it's going to be a little bit of everything. You're going to have to be a little more disciplined, and you're going to have to be creative as a market in how we create those lower price housing options, because construction's expensive. I mean, it costs a lot to build a typical 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. And then the second one was technology relating to commercial real estate.
So what do you think, like, what are some of the support industries or support sort of businesses that you'd like to see that would allow you to be more successful in commercial real estate? Like, that makes sense.
The gentleman that was talking about AI and technology and those types of things. I mean, I think the ability for me to understand everything relating to how a building operates both mechanically and financially is cool. And our software package that we work on right now is probably a little outdated, and what you see in some of that new technology from a software standpoint, accounting software, building management software that automatically tracks insurance certificates, and some of that stuff that's a lot of paperwork and a lot of time that we do manually. So those types of support service that help speed that up and help me be more efficient, both from an employee standpoint. I really don't want to have 10 people tracking insurance certificates. I want to have one person doing it, and I want to have the software do it. So those types of things I think are important. We saw a huge jump in technology relating to lighting and building operations and variable speed fans in buildings, and we were able to reduce electrical use in buildings significantly over the last 10 years. And that was an example of building technology that made our jobs better, made us more efficient, allowed us to generate a better return on investment for our clients. So, those types of things, how we're using energy, how we're using water, landscaping technology. I had a person come to my office the other day that analyzes your water use and your landscaping sprinklers and said, you're using way too much water. And what you need is something in a software that analyzes what the weather is, what the heat is, and turns the sprinklers on and off at different times to help conserve water. I thought, that's brilliant. And it really isn't that complicated from a technology standpoint, but nobody's ever pitched it to us before. So there's a lot of those interesting, how do you make things more efficient? How do you make buildings run better? How do you make people more comfortable? How to make the temperature better? All that's interesting to me. The accounting part of it's big. How can I be more sophisticated in reporting financial reports on a building and how it's operating to an owner?
All right. Well, thank you for the good questions, and thank you very much, Gordon. Really
Thank you.
appreciate you being here.
Thank you all very much.
Very interesting stuff to hear.
So we have a little token of our appreciation for you, Gordon, especially since you've been an Eagle, and you still are an Eagle, we hope.
Oh, yes.
Something
Always
that,
will be.
We'll remind you of your time here tonight on March 5th.
Thank you very
at
much.
Catalyst.
Yep, my pleasure.
And so now I believe it's time that we move on. Oh, no, you've got your next introduction. I forgot about that. Sorry, Patrick.
Yeah, so I just wanted to say thank you all for coming. Now is the time for the food. I think that's been delivered, has it not? I know, students, you don't have any business cards, but if you can just bring it to yourselves to think about talking to some of us older people in the audience and mingling, and maybe exchange something, that would be something that I think you would take away from in a very positive way tonight. So don't be bashful about some of us who look a little older than you. I also want to mention there are some brochures out there. We don't have one for every seat, but as I mentioned, these will continue, these talks. Yeah, it's a little one that Lorna produced here at great speed this afternoon. And we have, as I mentioned, one of the speakers in the audience tonight, Michelle Hagee, who has had a wonderful career expanding this Spokane-based firm called Dissetal Hagee, now DH, to other parts of our state, and has garnered some really high acclaim for the work in that firm. That is April 22. So same place, same format. And then in May, we're going to have the leading fintech or financial technology company, the co-founder and CEO, a guy named Steve Hembrecht, come and tell us how that happened. So mark your calendars for May 20th. So with that, we are done with the formal part of the evening. And again, I want to thank our sponsor, Washington Trust Bank, even in absentia. And would you all enjoy the rest of the evening? We have till the students you have about a half hour to get some food and head up to your classes. So with that, we are adjourned. Thank you for coming. And Gordon will be available for questions. Will you not, Gordon? Gordon, will you be, you're sticking around, aren't you? Okay. So